Okay, so today I want to talk about what an AA meeting is like and the importance of connection and community. I haven't been to one in years. I don't think since I first quit on my own for 3.5 years, about 11 years ago. And back then, one of my inspirations was that I didn't want to haul myself across town. I lived in Boston just to go to the meetings. I always found them fascinating. Never really resonated with the religious part, but, contrary to how some might think, not all the meetings are like that. And there are different type of meetings. There's open meetings, closed ones. There's big book where they do go through the 12 steps, etc. So I just went to an open general meeting last night. And, when I first walked in, looked around the room and thought, I didn't really see anyone I thought I could directly relate to just from a cursory level. But as they say, hang around long enough, you'll hear your story. And it did not take long before I fully resonated with pretty much everybody that was sharing. Typically, there's a general speaker, goes for about 20 minutes or so, and then individuals will share for around 3 minutes or so after that. First off, once I sat down, I spotted the basket, which is the collection basket, just to give people give $1 each, and I totally forgot about that. So heads up to anyone that goes to remember that. My first thought is always, how do people have singles? But I guess if you go to them regularly, you're certainly going to have those. And I did have some, stuffed away in my car, in my bag, and I wanted to shoot out of there and go get one, but it wasn't worth the disruption. So anyway, the one guy was talking about how he lost his wife when he had 9 months of sobriety, but he powered through it, which is amazing. And he obviously gave credit to the community. And I belong to an online sober community, which I absolutely adore. But, I do think it probably is a lot harder to slip when you have to face people in person at the next meeting, or perhaps skip the next meeting when you're a regular, and people are going to track you down, to find out how you're doing. So I would love to know statistically if there's a lot less slippage, if you will, within AA and those in-person communities. Another thing I like is just really the bold talk. In my community, they talk, and the previous one talked about no giving advice, and I do understand that, people just don't like to be told what to do. But it's, the easy trick to that is you just have to say, this worked for me, which I always joke is me saying, and that means you need to try it. But here, they come right out and say it as they should. This is a deadly disease. It wants to isolate and kill you. Do not drink. And I do wish there was more of that tough talk within the online communities. And I even need to talk tougher times. I did recently when lost a good friend in the community and basically gave that reminder. We all need to be deathly afraid of taking another sip. And people really aren't, because it often kills in a slower fashion, and it can kill in a hurry in terms of alcohol poisoning, so it's keep playing with fire. It can happen, and it happens every day. So the share I really resonated with, the subject was humility. And this guy, it's amazing how articulate the speakers are. This guy spoke on humility as if he'd been writing the speech for a week, and one of his examples of humility was when you've got shots of alcohol in your bag and you have to sneak into the bathroom at work just to get through your day, and that really resonated with me. And it's crazy to think that there was a time I was back there. And then another guy spoke about essentially the opposite of humility being pride, which, I was thinking about speaking to in terms of, I had a coach once say to me, hey, what if you were proud that you were a non-drinker? A lot of people almost apologize for it. And I said, yeah, you're right. And I never apologized, but I was never, I guess, proud, but I absolutely am now. I fully know. I just process it differently, and I couldn't be prouder. So that did come to mind, as well as just proud of doing the work every day. And that includes not only going to, but sharing on meetings. So, I had every intention of sharing. My buddy Matt had said he thinks it's a lot harder to share in person than on a Zoom call. Not that he's one of us and not that he does it, but so, and at first I thought, he's right. This is pretty intimidating, but I fully prepared to do it. I was thinking about my share the entire time, but, people would shoot their hands up after every speaker would finish. And, I deferred to the regulars. And before I knew it, an hour had flown by and that was it. So I actually didn't get to share. At the end, they hand out chips based on milestones. And I've never gotten one. I know friends, a friend just celebrated getting one recently. So I had, every intention of getting one, although I did feel guilty, ridiculously, about the fact I didn't have my dollar. So I was like, oh man, is this fair for me to get a chip, given that I didn't contribute my dollar? So the guy that was awarding them started right off, I just recently had 11 months, and he said anyone with 11, 10, or 9 months. I thought they'd start at, 30 days. So I was not prepared. Plus that hesitancy about my dollar, completely dropped the ball and did not stand up and get my chip. So next time. And, but that was great to see. And the guy himself said he had 11 months. Another guy had a year. The guy that did the speaker share had 2 years. And, it was just such an uplifting meeting and just reminded me of why community is so important. I wanted to go up to those guys that hit those milestones after, and congratulate them. But as I approached them, was even thinking about saying it, I was getting misty, and it's crazy. I definitely get emotional in the pink cloud phase, which I've been on for 11 months and counting, pink cloud for life. So I was just touched by the whole meeting. I mean, people just putting themselves out there. And again, how well-spoken they were. Same thing in my Zoom community, but there is just something about doing it while looking people in the eye. So I definitely expect to return. And on the subject of community and connection, we were talking, that was a theme of a call just today. And, I talked about a great quote from Laura McCown, author of We Are the Luckiest in my community. And she, reminds us that sobriety leads to a life full of deeper connections. And I'll tell you, these people last night, I could have hugged everyone's, particular ones that spoke, and would have felt like lifelong friends. And whenever I talk to my sober friends, it's such a deeper connection. It's certainly not as long as lifelong friends, but it's much deeper. And doing my podcast now, Cappy Hour, coming soon. I'm talking to guys I've never spoken to directly before, and it's as if I've known them my whole life. It's crazy. And, I'll give you one more quote from Laura related to connection. She said, many fall back into the well-worn grooves of self-reliance. They abandon community in favor of podcasts and the like, getting sober in the background while life goes on, but it ends lonely, stressful, and results in dishonesty and cognitive dissonance. And I think she couldn't be more spot on with that. There was a time I worked really hard to get 120 days of sobriety. I kind of had a falling out with my community. I did it on my own for another 30 days, but eventually just not having that connection, and to keep connection and honesty and community are two of the keys. And not having that, ultimately led me back to slipping, at my pizza shop, which was my biggest trigger, but had I known I had to, had I been sharing daily, A, I would have been a lot stronger. B, I wouldn't have wanted to go back and share that I'd slipped. So important. So just to recap overall on AA meetings, I could not encourage them more. I know early on, especially people's first meetings, it can be so intimidating. I was so grateful last night to have my sober confidence, 11 months of sober confidence. I actually walked in about 10 minutes late. I'm embarrassed to say, but I got held up at a store, and I normally would have been mortified, perhaps not even have gone in, but I did. And people, they're used to it. I even had seen, of course, a few people go in late ahead of me, and they just want you to be there. Yeah, ideally, get there early. Usually it's a little tricky finding out where the room is. Like this one was in the basement of a church. Would have taken me a while to find if I hadn't remembered having been there long ago. and people are not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. They want to help you. They love to hear new people share, and it's just such a great experience. And it's a necessary experience. Community connection is so key to this process. Community and honesty are absolute keys. Connection prevents people from returning to old habits, and isolation leads to relapse. So regularly attending some kind of sobriety support meeting is key to recovery. That'll do it. As always, please like, share, subscribe, and remember, stronger, sober. Thanks.